Ali Gundoldu works as a carpenter in a furniture factory in Istanbul. He says rising prices are chipping away at his standard of living and he wants the government to rein in inflation.
Benim beklentim şöyle düşünüyorum.
Inflation is rising, mainly because of the foreign currency rates. I believe we can cope with the situation, which is temporary and will not affect us in the long run.
On Thursday, the central bank raised its benchmark interest rate by 625 basis points to 24%. The government also announced new steps to support the lira. Property sales and rental deals are now to be made in the local currency. Contracts made in foreign currencies must be converted within 30 days. That's helping the lira bounce back. It rallied 5% against the dollar after the interest rate hike. Many of the raw materials Adnan Bostan Furniture uses are imported. Sometimes it borrows from local banks to pay for its purchases, and it sells to customers in Turkey as well as 26 other countries. So the hike in the interest rate affects this business in many ways.
When people buy furniture, they usually prefer to pay in installments. The latest interest rate increase will discourage domestic customers, but demand from foreign buyers is rising because of the weakness in the Turkish lira against the US dollar. On the other hand, the rate hike puts pressure on our investment plans.
While the currency markets reacted immediately, the impact on people and businesses will only become clear over the coming weeks based on how they spend, save and borrow. Bostan isn't the only one cringing at the central bank's decision. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan remains a staunch opponent of high interest rates.
My view on the interest rate remains exactly the same. There is no change on that. For sure, the central bank is independent. It makes its own decisions, but the private banks make their decisions according to the central bank's interest rate decision.
Economic growth is already slowing. Turkey's economy grew 5.2% in the second quarter compared to 7.3% over the same period last year. And that trend may worsen if companies scale down investments because of the high cost of borrowing. Mubin Nasir, TRT World, Istanbul.
Let's get more on this now, and for that I'm joined by Doğan Yilmaz here in the studio. He's the Director for Business Development at metals trading company Vintage Bullion, DMCC. Yilmaz, great to have you with us. Let's talk about what the central bank did today and the response in the markets, especially on the lira. The lira firmed up quite significantly. Overall, do you think today has been good news for both the lira and Turkey's inflation problem?
Since the strained relationships with the U.S., Turkish government and Turkish central bank has been trying to utilize the unorthodox, measures to support the lira. But what the world and the foreign investors were looking at, more orthodox measures like raising the interest rates. And they resorted for the unorthodox measures to gain some time to see the latest inflation numbers. But unfortunately, the latest inflation numbers came up much higher than they expected. So there was no other way but raise the interest rates. And so we have seen, today's move. It was, measured, and you could see that, show the independence of the central bank at least, which was a good news for the Turkish, economy and the. But is this going to solve the problem of the inflation? That's questionable, because the tight fiscal policy has to be followed also. To support the tight monetary policy. Unfortunately, the elections for the last couple of years that Turkey has been experiencing just played the hands of the government into just loosening the fiscal policy to appease the its constituency, and we are having another election in 2019. So it's a double-edged sword. In one hand, the government trying to appease the its constituency, And in order to do that, it has to show the higher economic growth. On the other hand, the foreign currency need of the economy is there. You cannot ignore that. And the foreign currency is getting short, and the liquidity is getting short and more expensive since the interest rates are rising in the U.S. So, and the carry traders we just talked about earlier, looking for higher interest rates around the globe, and in order to provide them and draw their attention to the country, you have to have real,
Right. I understand your point, but do you think that this is the right time to be raising interest rates, looking at it from another perspective, and that is the rising amounts of debt in this country? Because those higher debt levels, I mean, the people who hold that debt are now going to be squeezed from two ends, aren't they? I mean, they still have the exchange rate problem because a lot of those debts are denominated in foreign currencies, but they also now have higher interest rates. So is higher interest rates at this point the real solution, or is it going to create other problems in that area, i.e. the credit bubble that has been forming for quite some time?
When you look at the indebtedness of the country, and the government debt is low, and you don't see the household debt also in foreign currency, and only a private sector, the banks, as well as the private sector companies are indebted, actually, and those are mostly short term. And the banks, we can see that they are mostly hedged, and we don't know in the private sector how many of that, portion of that could be also hedged. Well, we have no, information about that. But like I said, it's a double-edged sword, and you have to just make a, just preference. You cannot grow, 5 to 7% all the time, and ignoring the, the higher inflation, the high, current account deficit. You have to go into balance. Like I said, these election cycles, and geopolitical, situation around Turkey is also feeding into the economy. So you have to be very careful. You have to follow the tight or balanced fiscal policy as well to support the tight fiscal monetary policy in order to just get the balanced growth as well as balanced or just acceptable inflation level.
Right. Very quickly, the other move today by the government was to insist that all real estate transactions must now be carried out in lira. Again, is this the right move at this time?
Well, if it is not going to be by the foreign investors thought of some sort of capital controls, this is a remnant of an old inflationary period in Turkey. Okay. So it has been dealing with this.
All right.
Dollarization, unfortunately, is a problem in the economy. Hopefully, this is not going to be seen as a capital controls type of measure. Okay. So if not, that's a good move.
We're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Yilmaz Dogan from Vintage Bullion DMCC. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Thank you.